So we're back here after a break, and we were talking off camera, and I'd like to get this in as Teddy and I were talking about a guy who's a wonderful guy, MWA guy, former president of the council, very active in northwest Montana, lives in Trout Creek, has a home building business there, very much in leadership roles for many years for Friends of the Scotchman Peaks, which is a proposed wilderness area up there in a very charming, wet part of the state of Montana. And I'm talking about Doug Farrell. I want to say a personal thank you to him for his idea, initiation of this concept for the History Project, the support from his family for this project. And Teddy would like to say a few words too about Doug before we get into some.
I never knew Doug before I was invited onto the Council of Elders. And my initial reaction was, well, basically, show me, because I had worked peripherally with MWA and in different over time, and sometimes the relationship was weak and sometimes it was not. And so I was asking if I join the council, will we be listened to? We travel long distances, go to these, but will we really have input? And I have to say that I was extremely impressed with Doug, and I still am. Just an excellent person, very articulate, and it was on his say-so that I went ahead and joined the Council of Elders.
He's very personable. He's very positive in any part of the state. There's going to be opposition to wilderness. He's a good listener. He's willing to compromise. But he does have this conviction and go. He has many convictions and goals, but one of them is the Scotchman Peaks.
Well, if I were a wilderness in the waiting, he's the person I would want to champion me.
Right.
I think he would do a really good job.
And it brings to mind the contrast here as far as we're talking about eastern Montana and issues in Billings, and there is wilderness here, Medicine Lakes, eastern Montana. Scotchman Peaks, hopefully someday will be wilderness. They have all this running water and moss everywhere there that you don't have at Medicine Lake. But they're all different, but they're all beautiful in their own way.
Right.
Medicine Lake has better sunrises and sunsets, for one thing. How about that? Yeah.
Well, we have a nice little array and a nice large array of wildernesses, but the protection never ends.
Right.
Protection never ends. It's, as they say about wilderness, is very true. You can save it many times, but you can lose it once.
Right.
And that's it. And in an earlier interview, we talked about this, after the Wilderness Act passed, and the act directed the Forest Service to go out and start an inventory, and at the end of 8 years, come back and present it to the President. The President have a couple of years to send recommendations to Congress. During those earliest years, we just cringed because the Forest Service was being directed to allow logging in certain areas. We had people coming in to us saying, stop this, stop that. There wasn't much we could do about it. And the object really was to compromise that area for future wilderness. It wasn't to get the timber, it was deliberately. So you lose massive amount. We lost massive amount. You think there's not that much left, but there is.
Mm-hmm. I think it brings to mind something also to say that I really had a greater appreciation for after reading a biography of Howard Zahniser. You talked about President Eisenhower, and really I would say a huge reason why we have the Wilderness Act was the election of John F. Kennedy in 1960. I mean, it's pretty obvious when you think about it in the timeline of elections and politics, but that was huge.
It was one of those historic shifts from the past, but you also were dealing with a senator. Once again, you want to have a champion in Congress. The easiest champions in Congress are the ones from the east, where they don't have wilderness areas left. where they don't have any public lands, and therefore they can support every acre of wilderness in the West. Well, obviously, a senator from Massachusetts who's running for president can easily support wilderness from the West.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you get out, either ideological divide is too great, somebody's from a party that's always hated wilderness, or you get closer to the land and then you really stir up the passions.
So you've lived a long and rich life, Teddy, in many ways, as far as your family life, your working careers, your working for conservation, and all these people that you've met over the years in D.C. and Montana, coming from the prairies of Nebraska originally. Wow, it's
very,
amazing.
very blessed, very blessed. I hearken back to growing up poor and ending up rich, and it has nothing to do with the money.
Mm-hmm.
And my first enrichment really came when Randy Floria, the Connolly Saddlery leather carver, would throw me in his car, and we'd go explore the Absaroka Beartooth, the Beartooth part and Yellowstone Park, and that was that. I think I would have always been attracted to the outdoors, and I would have always been a supporter if somebody explained it to me. But this way, I was hooked,
Mm-hmm.
and the business of, well, go ahead and ask your question,
Wow.
and I'll integrate what I was going to say into that. I'm sure.
Yeah, and I'll say one thing along those lines too. When I think about Nebraska, I think about this photo that I've seen. A lot of people have seen it, pretty famous, of a Nebraska homestead back in the pioneering era. A wooden cabin, very small sod roof, and then the expanse all around it of the prairie. And think about how people were living there. You did not have electricity growing up.
True.
And how it affects your life, and other people with similar backgrounds go in a different direction. One person that comes to mind is Floyd Dominy, a Bureau of Reclamation, who was from Nebraska and grew up in a situation kind of similar to yours, but he went off in a different direction. It's amazing.
Well, I would like to say something here, because I certainly don't go around saying anything negative about Nebraska. I mean, it's a great state, like every other state. But I was in Montana by age 10, and I never looked back. I am a Montanan first, last, and foremost. It's the state that's been good to me, and all of my great memories really come from it.
Mm-hmm.
The Nebraska memories were not pleasant. They were Dust Bowl era endings. There was drought and drink and some other problems. And we got in an old 1934 Chevy pulling a two-wheel trailer right out of the Grapes of Wrath,
Mm-hmm.
with a wash tub hanging on the side, 7 kids in the back seat, and we toured the West looking for work.
Wow.
So I've had a real look at all facets of life, and the best facets really have been here in Montana.
Mm-hmm.
And so any discussion I have about Montana Wilderness Association, or people who should have done this or should have done that, is done with the greatest of affection. This is my home.
Yeah, good. So I'd like to ask you, in light of your very rich life that you've had, and many more years to come, about any advice, reflections, getting philosophical or metaphysical if you want to, or recommendations that you have for others watching this individually as researchers or audiences. Any advice, reflections, and recommendations based on your life experiences for people watching what you have to say here today?
Oh, there's so many possible answers, and when I finish this one, I will think of something that I left out. Since we're talking about wilderness, and that's the theme of all of these tapings, the hope is that there will be wilderness left that will qualify for salvation by the time, that maybe people will read this. My greatest strength in life, I think, has been curiosity. And the second one is a close second, which is the desire to have knowledge about many things. So I would recommend that if somebody wants to have a richer life and understand what they're looking at, read. Read, read. Read short term about what's happening today, but especially go back and immerse yourself with some American history, the flow, so that we know how we got to this point. So when somebody stands up in a crowded room and purports to say this is what the founding fathers wanted, beat them to the punch. I don't mean in a combative sense, but I mean be ready for it. My strongest, if I have several Rose laws, and one of them is the main purpose of education is to spot the phonies. You may not know everything about a given subject, but you can tell that something doesn't ring right. And that doesn't mean just the phony individual, but phony arguments. And the way that you can spot the phony arguments is have enough information about a subject so that it raises questions in your mind or alarm bells. One of my favorite senators was Hubert Humphrey of Minnesota. Hubert Humphrey was the most outstanding senator I had ever seen. There would be nobody like him for his wide-ranging knowledge and his oratory, etc. And one of his sayings that always stuck with me was, generalists are people who have experts on call. So be a good generalist. What did the founding fathers intend? And I'm not trying to be partisan right here, but since I have a little bit of tape, I'll go ahead and use it.
Please do.
Right now, in the opinion of a great many people, one of the threats to democracy is the inequality in power and money in the public sphere, and not only the acquisition of incredible power and money by corporations, but now being recognized as human beings for purposes of free speech. And in a recent court case about religion, actually being recognized that they have a religious conscience or a religious being that the Supreme Court has to protect. When in reality, if people and the people who defend them will say the founding fathers intended this and that. This is an extreme case, but if anybody watching this will hark to the central message, you'll know that you need to spot the phonies first. Don't let people get away with saying things. The 13 colonies, with I think one exception, were founded by corporations. The original Tea Party was to dump the tea from the world's largest corporation in the water because they didn't like corporate control. Every member of Parliament, no matter the party, had held stock in the East India Tea Company, or I don't know the precise name of it. The American settlers chafed at laws occasionally from the king or from Parliament, but by and large it was from their own rulers, who were corporate types. They were appointed by the corporations, the original governors. So I'm saying that think about if this was then, why do we have now? Was it really what the founding fathers intended? Corporations, when the country was formed, corporations could be formed upon petition for discrete times, generally 5 years. They had to have a public purpose, and at the end of the chartering, they dissolved. If you want to get what the founding fathers thought about corporations, if you do some research, you can find out. They were hated by most of the people, by the principals Thomas Jefferson has some real choice words about corporations. If you let them get a toehold in society, you're going to have problems. Now, my argument, my purpose for saying this is not to rail against corporations. We have some fine corporations, and they go down to family-owned enterprises, etc. They are what they are. But it's the phonies that will come along and say the founding fathers said it. So all that has implications for wilderness. You know, how we dispose of the land. Once you get a ideology up and running, it seems like it has to run forever until it goes over a cliff or somebody fights back. Wilderness is one of those. From the day that public land policy started in this country, everybody wanted a piece of the action. The 13 colonies, 7 of the 13 colonies had western borders that were indeterminate. They could have reached to the Pacific Ocean. The other 6 says, hey, we're not going to go into a country with you until you have fixed western boundaries. We're not going to let you just keep growing and growing and growing, and you have 100 members in Congress, and we only have 3. So they ceded, by design, after the Articles of Confederation, they ceded back to the central government anything beyond certain boundaries. Overnight, the central government was land rich. And from then on, it's been a race to give it away.